Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another AP Human Geography video. I am Mr. Latimer,
And I'm Dr. Scoggins.
and today we're going to be starting Unit 2, Population and Migration. But before we do that, let's talk about our sponsor. Our sponsor is Old Man Smell. Old Man Smell. You know it.
Yeah, you would know it.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, today, I will teach you about skills 2.1 and 2.2. We will identify the factors that influence the distribution of human populations at different scales,
Define methods geographers use to calculate population density.
explain the differences between and the impact of methods used to calculate population density,
And finally, explain how population distribution and density affects society and the environment.
All right, so skill 2.1 is all about population distribution. You're going to see that word distribution a lot this year. All it means is the location of something. So if we're looking at the location of population, so where are people living in the world? That's what this skill is about. Population distribution. Well, sorry, 2.1 is also about demographics. Demographics is a fancy word meaning the study of population. And what we're looking at in terms of population is birth, death, disease, and migration, as these pictures indicate. You got birth, you got death, disease, and you got migration. And I know Hide the Pain Harold here. I know he's not dead yet, but
Hide the Pain Harold.
he was a Hungarian.
Is he really?
I heard. I don't know. That's what the internet told me.
So, the first thing we need to look at are population centers. Okay, this is where most of the world's population, or also known as clusters, are located. The most is going to be South Asia, which is right here, or India and Pakistan and Bangladesh. That's where they're located. That's about 1.98 billion. In comparison, the United States, we have about 330 million,
something like that.
People that live in the United States. They have 1.98 billion. India, the second largest, now the first, I believe.
Yeah, that recently happened.
Largest population of 1.406 billion.
Yeah.
The next is going to be East Asia. This is going to be right there, mostly China.
Yeah.
China's the second largest population now, 1.414 billion people. Europe, 746 million. And finally, Southeast Asia, 681 million people live on those regions.
Yes.
Bringing back those vocabulary from the previous
unit. Yes. Very good. All right. So site and situation factors. All right. You're going to see these words a lot this year, so you want to get them down now. Site is the physical location of a place. This will never change. The city of Dallas is built along the Trinity Rivers. That will never change. The city cannot physically move. There's a movie where they did Mortal Engines.
Wouldn't it be hilarious if a city just got up and moved?
Well, they have they look like giant tanks. They have these wheels and they like treads and they eat other cities.
I just imagined a city sprouting legs and running down.
The river.
Sure.
Yeah. All right. So if site is the location of a place. Now, notice I underline these words. Just think of them as synonyms. Site is the location. Situation is how places are connected. You can be connected in lots of ways with ports, highways, airports, and the internet. Places are connected in more ways today than ever before because of the internet. You have markets and resources and manufacturing abilities that are connected thanks to the internet. We're making contact with each other. Most densely populated places are located near coastlines and rivers like these pictures are showing. So why?
Well, it would make sense to put your site in a place that's easily accessible to other sites, creating a situation between two sites.
Yes. Excellent answer.
Okay.
I know.
Thank you.
Okay. Undesirable or uninhabitable locations.
It's not really tested.
Yeah, not tested, so don't stress this anymore. If you see the word akumene on the AP exam, I'm sorry, but at least you're hearing it from me. Basically, there are some places where people don't live, but these are the extremes, right? They're too cold, too dry, too wet, too hot, right? like you see, you got the deserts. This is near the city of Yakutsk in Russia. This is probably somewhere in the southeast United States.
Someone is crazy living in that city where their eyes are frozen open.
Yes.
Why? Why would you live at that site?
Well, if my memory serves, the city of Yakutsk was a penal colony or a
gulag.
gulag, yeah. So you had people who didn't want to be there, but they were sent out there as a punishment.
But people still live
They
there.
still lived there because I guess they had jobs and they made something of themselves, and they're like, well, I guess I'll stay. So yeah, there are places where people shouldn't be living ever, but they've somehow made it happen. Which leads me to my next word, ecumene, which is the part of the Earth's surface where everybody can live. Now, this area has grown due to improved technologies. You can see that in these pictures here. We start off 5000 BC. You have people living in the Balkans. You have people living in the Middle East and in East Asia. People were mostly living near river valleys because they were living where you could grow food. It was generally warm there, so you had good growing seasons. And then as time went by, those places expanded because technology improved to the point where people could live beyond these naturally easy level difficulties. And now we're living in places like Siberia, parts of Africa, like densely. Okay, but don't stress too much about ecumene. It's not that heavily tested. Okay, there are 3 ways we can measure population density. I've seen lots of questions like this pop up on the AP exam, so you want to study these. Okay, the first is arithmetic density. It's also called crude for some reason. This is the amount of people divided by the amount of land. So this is the most basic way you can calculate density. You're just literally counting people and comparing it to the amount of space they are in. So if you have a high arithmetic density, it means you live in a crowded area.
So in 1 square mile, let's say 1,000 people live in 1 square mile.
Yeah, that's pretty high density.
That's arithmetic. That's
density. You're comparing people to the amount of land, just land. Okay, this second type is physiological. This is, in my opinion, the most tested one. I don't know why, but just get used to it. Physiological density is the amount of people divided by the amount of arable land. I know we talked about land in the first one, but that's just comparing people to land. This one is arable land, which means you can grow food on it. If you have high physiological density, it means you have lots of people compared to a part of arable land. So you don't want to have too much physiological density. If you have too many people, not enough farmable land, what could happen?
Starvation,
and they'll chop off Marie Antoinette's head or something. Yeah, that's what happened in France.
Yeah. Or the Russian Revolution,
or any of the revolutions.
Most revolutions start
with physiological density problems
because they didn't have any food.
Yes. Okay, here's a hot tip for you guys. When you have a question that has the word physiological in it, the correct answer 9 times out of 10 will have the word arable in it. Okay, so look for that. Okay, agricultural density. I have never seen a practice question or an AP question with this.
Now you said this.
Now I say
someone's listening to this and they're going to create like 30 of them.
Yeah. They're like, we'll get you. We'll get you. Okay, agricultural density is the number of farmers divided by the amount of arable land. So notice both of these are about arable land, but agricultural is specifically looking at the amount of farmers. Now, what this is useful for is determining how developed a society is. If you have a lot of farmers in a small area, that generally means you're a less developed country. Because the more developed countries have few farmers, because those farmers have been replaced by machines like tractors or airplanes that drop fertilizer from the sky or water or whatever. This picture on the bottom right shows you physiological density. So you got some countries that are dark green, meaning they have high density. These would be countries like Japan, South Korea, Indonesia, Vietnam, Egypt, Cambodia, and Venezuela, and the United Kingdom. So notice you have a mixed bag of highly developed and less developed. Physiological density has nothing to do with your level of development. It just has to deal with the amount of arable land you have compared to people. So Egypt is mostly desert. They are highly dense. They have a high arithmetic density along the Nile River. Okay. Colombia and Venezuela, lots of mountains, lots of trees and jungles. That takes up space that could have been used for farming. Indonesia, mountainous jungle islands. Lots of people, crowded. So you're going to have some food shortage problems. All right. So just remember the key words here that we've underlined. Arithmetic is about people. Physiological is about arable land. Agricultural is just looking at farmers.
So the next is going to be your skill 2.2, the consequences of population distribution. This picture, Mr. Latimer,
Yes.
what is this?
Is it a quinceanera? I don't know.
Just a lot of people.
It's a lot of people, yeah.
Okay. So
Okay.
the first consequence
It's
is political. What does political mean? Political means government, laws, and representation in government. Look, from now on, if you see the word political, it's about government, laws, and representation in government.
Yeah.
Okay? More people live in cities now than any other time in human history. Why?
Services. People want to live where there are things that can help them.
This gives cities more representation in the government. States with larger cities have more influence in the government. So Texas, California, New York, Florida. If you look at our electoral map, you're going to notice that the higher the population, people living in these cities, the more electoral college votes they're going to have. Now, this is something completely, well, we didn't even talk about this in this course, but you're going to learn more about this as you continue on through your studies. It is important for you to understand that more people live in cities now than any other time in human history, and because of that, cities have more representation in government. So the political consequences. What is the consequences? So everyone lives in these cities. You have more political representation. That's great, right? Consequences tend to be negative. What about Farmer Bill, who lives in the middle of nowhere?
His voice isn't heard anymore.
Do we want to hear his voice?
In the grand scheme of things,
Do
no.
we care about him?
No, not anymore.
Unfortunately not. So those are the political consequences for people who live in urban or city versus rural or country, middle of nowhere.
Yeah. Okay, economic consequences. So you're going to see that word a lot this year. Economic just means money and jobs. And jobs and services. Services are things that help you in some way, like a doctor, an auto mechanic, a school. Any kind of business is a service. It helps you survive. What we're going to notice is that jobs and services are going to be mostly located in the highly dense areas like cities. Now, creates something called uneven development, which is another concept you're going to see throughout this entire year. Uneven development means that not everything's fair. You're going to have a clustering of things in one area and compare that to another place that doesn't have any of it. Okay. Like compare the amount of services in these two pictures. Okay, this is North Park Mall, North Park Center in Dallas. Compare that with this picture on the right. Okay,
middle of nowhere.
Middle of nowhere. Okay, if you had to pick a place where you would probably find a job, you would probably go with the one in the city because there's a variety of options here. Meanwhile, if you live out in the country, your job opportunities are kind of limited. You'll mostly find farming or basic manufacturing work, maybe some local stores. You're not going to see much. Okay. Now, the consequences of that, places that are urban or more dense are going to have a higher cost of living. Okay. Like North Park Mall, they used to have a Disney store, but the cost of living was so high there, the cost of rent was so high that the Disney store had to leave North Park Mall.
Just think about that for a second. Disney was forced out of North Park Mall. Disney. God.
Overlord Disney that runs our world can handle it. But Wetzel's Pretzels can.
Next to Auntie Anne's.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Cultural consequences. So, we're looking at things in terms of culture. And we're going to talk tons about culture in the next unit, but just quickly, culture is things that people do, right?
Yes.
It's basically what we do, our languages, our religious beliefs, whatever.
Our
Okay.
thoughts, yeah.
Everything that humans do is culture. Now, the cultural consequences for this is families in rural areas. This is the country again. We're going to have larger families. Why? Lower cost of living. And sometimes these people are farmers. They're going to need more free labor through kids. Yes,
Yes.
I saw this growing up. Tons and tons of children in these families. Too many to count. Beyond the, as far as I could see, children just running amok in these hills. I'm just kidding. I didn't see any of that. But what I did see was that these families had larger families. Primarily, even though that we're no longer an agrarian society,
Yeah.
it is still a lower cost of living. So Barbara Sue and Billy John can have 14 children and everything seems to work out for them.
Yes.
However, living in the urban
Urban
or the city, you're going to have smaller families or
no.
just two people married or not married, or they're just kind of living on their own. And the reason why, higher cost of living. Okay, it costs a lot more in cities to do anything. Cities are also crowded. Houses and apartments are not big enough for large families. So if you live in Dallas and the average price for a 2-bedroom apartment in Dallas is
like $1,800.
It's like $1,800. $1,800 in a rural area will give you a house with 5 or 6 bedrooms.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding. That's actually true.
Yeah.
Okay. So the cultural consequences is that you're going to see a divergence of cultural identities. Okay. We're going to talk a little bit about this. It's going to be interesting to note that in the rural areas, people are tend to be what? Politically.
In rural areas,
Yes.
they're conservative.
More conservative. Whereas in the urban areas, people tend to be more liberal. And there's a reason why. It's dealing with this phenomenon that we see here with the cultural consequences.
Yes. Okay, environmental consequences. So when you have a lot of people together, they're going to create a lot of pollution, concentrated pollution. So you're going to start seeing smog, like in this picture on the left. Like the air quality is bad. Like in China and Japan, people are wearing face masks long before COVID.
They did it because of the smog.
Well, that and also they already had diseases. Well, in China they did. Every major disease has come from China.
Not necessarily true.
I know, but most.
Spanish flu came from Kansas.
That is true.
That's the only thing I could think of.
Yeah, but Black Death and
yeah.
All right. Densely populated places are not sustainable because it requires natural land to be converted into houses and businesses. This picture in the middle you see is something called urban sprawl, which is the endless expansion of cities. It's growing. And every time a city gets bigger, it has to absorb the land around it and convert it into a new apartment complex or a strip mall or something. And that takes land that used to be meant for farming and it's converting it into an urban area. That's not sustainable because you're taking something that's natural and making it something that's not. Less polluted places are usually used for farming, which requires fertilizers. Fertilizers are great because they help plants grow faster and stronger. The downside of them is that they cause pollution in the groundwater. So you have a farm over here, Farmer Joe uses fertilizer. It rains, the rain carries away some fertilizer. It goes into the groundwater or this river over here. Animals start drinking the water.
The fish
die. People eat the fish that ate the fertilizer. We get sick from it. So fertilizer is great, but it also has its environmental consequences.
Carrying capacity. So you're going to probably be taking a science class one day about carrying capacity. I'm sure there's going to be a term you're going to hear it a few times. The amount of people or animals, if you're in another class, who can live in an area and support themselves off the land. So if you have 5 people and enough land to support 10 people, will those 5 people survive? Yes. Will they thrive?
No.
Yes. Until they have 5 additional people.
Yeah.
The moment they go above 10, that's when starvation, that's when they have to move again, carrying capacity. You cannot support yourself, then the population will decrease. Okay, the population grows beyond carrying capacity. This causes something if they're doing agriculture, desertification. Desertification is literally the creation of deserts because of using your soil, and when you use your soil and you don't replenish the nutrients within the soil dies and it becomes like a desert. Okay,
And deserts expand.
they do expand.
Yeah, so that's the problem. You can create a desert, and the desert will create more deserts.
That's so sad.
That is sad.
Overpopulation, this is the number of people in a larger than carrying capacity, and this creates problems for people. Not enough jobs, food, water, or services. Primary places that have overpopulation issues. Let's see. Places in India.
Yeah.
You see these pictures with there's tons of people hanging on the side of these trains for transportation. These are areas that have so many people, they have to migrate in order to find jobs or even something as simple as food and water and services. So, carrying capacity.
Yes.
That should have been the sponsor, I think, this
Carrying capacity.
carrying capacity.
Yeah. Next time. We'll get them. All right, y'all. That is it for this lesson. We'll catch you next time.
Yeah.